Welcome to the Predictive Playbook. I'm your host, John Ryan, and it's championship week. We got the PGA players going on. I mean, what could possibly be better other than having my good friend, Kiev O'Neil, founder of oddsbreakers.com, join me while games are being played, break down some games tonight, and we're going to do this in rapid fire fashion in about 15 minutes. So get your pens and paper ready, and we're going to let it fly. How's it going today, Kiev?
Doing well, man. Watching a little Big Ten. Ohio State playing Minnesota. It's not really much of a game right now, but it's getting a little bit whistly, if you know what I'm saying.
I see, and I'm looking at live odds here. We might as well get right into it right here. So just give me 1 second to pull this up here. I want everybody to. I'm using MGM, which I like quite a bit. Out of all the sports books I've tested, many of them are quite good in their own right. MGM just has that kind of extra edge.
Right.
Now,
let me grab something. I'll be right.
Okay. Now, with the Minnesota-Ohio State game, Ohio State is at the intermission here, leading by 12, as you can see on the screen. And we have lines minus 105, minus 120. And I've actually have recorded this data, and just do yourselves a favor and trust me on this, never to bet in-game at minus 120 or higher. It'll be, over time, it's going to cost you probably the equivalent of 3 or 4 bets outright. And whenever I see minus 105 and it's something I wanted to do, like if I was on Minnesota and I was going to grab it, that's what I target. And you have to be patient. And, as many as you know, I worked on Wall Street. I was an institutional trader. So sometimes you have to be patient, let the market come to you instead of thinking that you missed it. And you know what? At the end of the day, if you miss the opportunity in game, there's another game coming up. So don't beat yourself up. Don't force it because you think, oh, my God, it's not going to 14.5 is going to be the peak here. I got to grab it now. Don't ever think like that. Patience is even more important in-game betting.
Yep. And I'd like to add in, if you see it juiced, and when you come in, you're probably thinking to yourself, why does my sides always seem a little bit juiced? Well, it's because it's how people are. There's a lot of people thinking like you. Like the favorite is down. The 10-point favorite's only at a 1-point lead right now. Let's go in-game bet it. I mean, that's how everybody thinks. And that's what you have to get past is the fact that, well, maybe the other side's actually still better in this situation. They're keeping up with them. There's reason for that. And there's the reason there's juice. The two reasons are the book A wants to make money, and B, the book's going to know it's going to get overly exposed on that side. Well, I mean, these books are making money off being overly exposed, aren't they? So remember that when you're getting into this.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Kiev. When you see a minus 120, it's almost like a stop sign. It's a major red flag, and you should just resist the temptation to do it no matter what. I can't agree more. But look at this score here. K-State and Baylor. I mean, that's almost unimaginable. So if you like Baylor,
today, I almost bet K-State at 20. I was like, man, that's getting high. But at the same time, I mean, K-State has improved a little bit, and they're pretty hot. But I mean, it's so hard to fade Baylor just because they've been beating so many teams by margin this year. But right now, you're going to get a second half spread of Baylor minus 12 or 13. Probably, it's going to literally, give you the extra point or two or bigger juice. I mean, the second half spread should be Baylor, minus 8 or 9, really. And
yep.
It could be serious. It's probably where it should be, but I doubt you get it.
Well, look at that line, 13.5. So the market is anticipating the rush of the public to take Baylor at this cheap price, or at least cheaper than it was pre-flop. One other thing I'll add here, Kiev, because we really didn't talk about this before we went on the air, but I love doing the in-game when there's a run against me of 10 or more points. So in college basketball, that doesn't happen nearly as often as in the NBA. So it's more of my NBA style. Mm-hmm. But here with live games, and if you're watching these games right now, keep an eye out for a team that just ripped off 10 in a row. For example, K-State, they go up 44-36. You want to hammer Baylor. And that's what I look for, and it's kind of like that institutional trading from Wall Street. You look for the rushes, and then you sell into them. You look for the dips, and you buy into them. And again, never more than minus 115 even. Minus 110, minus 105, that's it. And then we have...
I'm going to lean K-State on this. It's, unfortunately, the way I do it, as a handicapper, we can't give out live betting. Otherwise, we try and say, hey, but you can't. There's nowhere to sell it, obviously. But
right.
Yeah, I mean, as a personal play right now, I'm highly going to consider the K-State. You notice how it just the juice is on them a little bit now. So there's some smarter people right now looking at that number.
And, in the NBA, that's a good point. I actually put in my research sometimes that the strategy, put 50% of your normal bet size in pre-flop. Then use the game volatility, especially with the NBA games that have a total over 240, because the higher the total, and I know this is common sense, but the higher the total, the more likelihood you're going to have big runs back and forth. And the NBA is known for that. So then you take 10% or 15% moving forward, and say your line is minus 10 pre-flop. Then you look for minus 6. Put 15% down. Look for minus 2. Put another 15% down. Maybe you'll even get a dog line of plus something. At the end of the day, you're going to have an average betting line that is superior to what you could have done 100% pre-flop. So that's just some food for thought. It works in the college realm as well, but when you have to be careful with these teams that are mismatches, the favorite can just run away, and there's never a chance to even do it. But sorry, I'm hogging the mic here, Kiev. I just,
Oh,
sometimes
no,
I have a gift of gab.
No, I believe it. I believe it. We got about 10 minutes left. Let's get into some games.
Okay, I know we want to talk about the Big Ten, I think. So let's get over to that. Which game tonight on the card do you want to mention?
Well, I mean, we should start with the Wisconsin-Penn State one, of course. I mean, let's go with the late one. This is the game that I imagine you're going to like the Nittany Lions, maybe because you're such a Nittany Lion backer in Pennsylvania. So, and I like Wisconsin to win this game. It got kind of expensive though, for the side, and I like Wisconsin because they're seniors coming into this tournament. They've all been in the tournament before. They know what it's about. There shouldn't be any nerves. They've made this thing 4 or 5 times, this travel, and they're upset. They finished the season bad. They're a bad shooting team, but this is the kind of game that they could start shooting really well again. And I'm concerned for Penn State on that. But I think the market's telling you that because, the Ken Poms and Torbiks have this game between 3 and 4 points, and it's at 5.5 right now. So I'm not touching the minus 5.5. I'm just leaving it. I'm going to probably just do a little money line roll over with Wisconsin, and maybe, I'll take them as a dog when they're a little bit later down this tournament.
Yeah, I agree with you, Kiev. My machine learning stuff had a lean on Penn State, but this is where I use intuition and fundamentals analysis as well. You can't have just a black box. So Penn State, you have to wonder how much is left in the tank. They've had some very, very close losses. I always think of the Ohio State game that they basically had won and it got away from them, and they must be mentally exhausted, is my guess. Even though they had a nice win the last game against Maryland, can they get to the semifinal? I don't think so. No. So I'm going to pass on the game, but
I'll lean Penn State at plus 5.5. My number's 5, so I lean Penn State.
The one matchup real quick in this game fundamentally is Penn State ranks 87th in assist-to-turnover ratio, 1.152, going up against a mediocre Wisconsin assist-to-turnover, and this is adjusted for opponents, that ranks 190th. So you would think that that's a pretty good matchup for Penn State. However, Wisconsin ranks 7th nationally, 1.506 assist-to-turnover ratio. And I believe 3 of the other teams ahead of them are in the Big Ten. Illinois, Iowa, Michigan, and Wisconsin are all in the top 10 in assist to turnover. They're going against a Penn State defense that ranks 220th with defensive opponent assist to turnover at 1.018, which is not good. The machine learning is what it is. It's not strong enough to make a play, but my gut tells me that this is Penn State's last game.
Yeah, it should be their last game, but we just saw Georgetown beat Nova, and we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah. And quickly, Kiev, I know we're short on time. We have to mention Duke, I guess. Do they now get in, or does this COVID forfeiture of the game?
I mean, if they get
actually help them?
If they get in, no. They don't have any quality wins, minus a couple in the ACC, one or two of them maybe, where they beat Virginia in overtime. I guess Georgia Tech is now a quality win. But, they faced Michigan State, who, you saw them play today, and they lost to Michigan State. And their non-conference was just not that good. And there's just too many other teams that could go in. Now, if the committee puts them in there, you're going to see a massive backlash of people being like, this is absolutely biased and wrong, and the NCAA needs to be investigated, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think they're stupid enough to do that. Sorry, Duke. If I'm a Duke fan, if I'm a Duke fan, I don't want them in either. I'm mad. I'm like, this team does not deserve to be in. I'm sure there's a lot of Duke fans out there that think that, if Wisconsin didn't deserve to be in and they were put in because the name Wisconsin, I would be the fan that would say that's BS personally. But it's weird to see Kentucky and Duke not being in the NCAA tournament here because Kentucky just missed that last 3-point shot against Mississippi State.
Yeah, it is unimaginable. It really is. I know you wanted to mention Indiana Rutgers too, which is a very intriguing game in its own right. Both teams seem to be on the brink here of needing a win to advance and then get another win, and then they're probably in the tournament for sure.
Right.
I know there's people that say they're both in now, but I'm not one of them. I think Rutgers is in. Indiana has to win this game.
Indiana's got to win this game and more. Rutgers should be in, but if I'm Rutgers, I'm kind of thinking, man, maybe I should win this game as an insurance policy to get in. Rutgers has some issues, had some bad issues earlier in the season. It's not like they have I think they're even in Big Ten play. I think that they had a good finish here, but Rutgers is they have a bad shot. They're not good at shooting. They have a bad shooting percentage, but compared to Indiana, believe it or not, Indiana's a little bit worse. Even Indiana, 43.5% field goal percentage. Now Rutgers has them in everything really, but free throws. They have them in free throws and 3-point percentage. They have them in rebounding. They have them in assists. They have them in turnovers. Rutgers is about equal assist to turnover ratio. Block shots, Rutgers has them in. I like Rutgers in this game. At 3 is where I put the brakes on, though. I think it's a small play at 3. And Indiana's desperate, but Rutgers should be desperate too, is the way I look at it. So I put a small play on Rutgers at the -3.
Yeah, you're right. It's amazing how close these teams are in their makeup. Indiana ranks 175th in scoring offense, 70.5. Rutgers 176th, averaging 70.4. Defensively, 98th for Rutgers, 141 for Indiana. They differ by 1.6 points per game. The big difference that sticks out a little bit here is I've always viewed Rutgers this year as a good ball handling team. Assist to turnover ratio is 45th, 1.24. Indiana, 82nd. Not horrible by any stretch of the imagination, but they're at 1.157, and turnovers in this game is going to go a long way to determine who wins this game, and that would side with Rutgers taking better care of the ball.
And Indiana's lost twice to Rutgers, once at home by 4 points or so, and then once on the road by 11. Rutgers has their number. And if you look at Rutgers, their defense on KenPom is ranked 18th in the nation. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yes,
you're in the 40s with Indiana, and that's kind of where the 3 points comes from for me, is the fact that they're pretty even on offense. The problem with a team like Rutgers is you don't bet on them as a huge favorite because their free throw percentage. When they're getting fouled up 7, up 6 points, they could miss and the other team's back in this game. So the fact that it's 3 is okay, but anything over 3 I would not take.
Now, with the few minutes that we have left, I definitely wanted to get your thoughts on this point. This tournament is taking place in a football stadium dome. And the background is not anything like any of these kids have ever seen or haven't seen, at least this year.
Right.
There's no fans in there to add more to the depth perception from the field. And some of these teams are going to be playing 2 games before they go up against those top 4 of Michigan, Iowa, Illinois, and Purdue. So those 4 teams are not going to be taking the floor other than to practice, and that, I think, is much different than the game. So do you think whoever wins these first 2 games to get to those top 4 teams is going to have an advantage? Like if we have a double-digit dog going up against Illinois, do you think that's going to be an opportunity because of the arena?
First half, maybe. But at the same time, there's fatigue factor that should set in at some point. A lot of these teams had their season spread out a little bit because of COVID, and they didn't have to have the grind of 3 games a week or anything. So, in my opinion, that I think that the first half you might look to fade a big Illinois team against one of these teams, but I wouldn't do the full game necessarily because of the fatigue factor.
I think that the first half unders I'm going to look at when we get to that point. I'm not saying I'm going to make a bet on the first half unders, but I'm willing to take a shot at it too. And the other thing I've noticed is the increase in fouls being called, and it's generally not being called at the end of the games. As you've mentioned accurately, Rutgers is a terrible foul shooting team. I believe they are dead last in the Big Ten. But if you get into a game where it's 7 points, 8 points, and there's intentional fouls, I think that works against the team trying to come back. I'll give you a perfect example. Iowa. The coach has been adamant. Like, I don't think there's been one time that Garza has had 2 fouls that he has not come out of the game immediately. And if the refereeing continues at this rate, then you do have an advantage with Garza being out of the game and being in shooting in that environment for the first time. That's where I see these possible upsets occurring. Maybe not specifically for these reasons, but there's going to be more reasons than that. Obviously, if the whistles are blowing like crazy, the odds are that Garza is going to get 2 fouls and have to come out midway through the first half, and that could be devastating to them, no matter who they play at that point. At least that's my opinion, and I really wanted to see what you thought.
So, I mean, if Garza's still in there, then you definitely have a problem there. I don't know why Fran McCaffrey would make that mistake in such a big game. Now, you're right. He has kind of done that a little bit during the year. But here's another problem. They don't have their backup Nunji for Iowa. And and also Weiskamp is very questionable. I don't think he's going to play in the tournament, actually, which gives Iowa a ton of downside here. Iowa facing those neutral backdrops. I'll probably it's number dependent as usual, but I'm going to be looking to fade Iowa in their first game tomorrow. Seeing what the draw is.
Yeah, I'll be looking to do the same thing, even though I do like the team. But my pick for the tournament is Illinois, and I know that's a very popular pick, but I think they're the best team in the Big Ten according to my numbers and my rankings in several categories, both ends of the court. And I don't mind taking them to win the NCAA tournament as well. In fact, I actually sent an email out to Parks Casino here outside of Philadelphia asking for a line that would have Gonzaga and Baylor on the one end and every Big Ten team that is in the tournament, and I'll take the Big Ten side of that equation. Obviously, if a team not on that list wins it, then it's a no play. But I would have to think that would almost be even money based on the market. You and I would think that would be like 5-1 in favor of the Big Ten. But but I just don't think it's going to be Gonzaga, and I don't think it's going to be Baylor.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Bet them to get to the Final Four. Yeah, there's some good. There's going to be some interesting numbers out there, and the Big Ten has had the hardest conference for sure. Big 12 is second. So Gonzaga is really tough to bet because if they face they're going to be facing a lot harder competition they're not used to. And that's how it is every year for Gonzaga. But it's a COVID year. A lot of chalk's been winning, so we'll see what happens, my man.
Yeah. Well, I know you have to get going here, Kiev, but I really appreciate your time. I think we're planning on having you on Thursdays for the most part, which will be great. And probably more than that even. So for the Predictive Playbook, I am John Ryan, and we'll look forward to speaking with you tomorrow. And always remember, may all the wins be yours.
Best luck, everyone.